Hey, True Believers, Chris Mack coming at you today with Transformers issue 26. And this book is both heartbreaking, but very engaging and interesting all at the same time. This is a funeral for a friend. So if you guys have been following the channel, starting at issue 24, at the end of that issue, after a battle with Megatron, Optimus Prime dies. And the way he dies in the comics was really frustrating, but interesting in the way that it affects not just the Autobots, but the Decepticons as well as we go through issue 25. In this book, they're saying goodbye to their friend. So if you don't want this spoiled, either pause this review, go check out the reviews that we've done, or go to your local comic shop and get the books, and you're back. So before we dive into this, the print date was March 1987. This is Bob Budiansky doing the writing, Don Perlin doing the penciling, Brett Brading doing the inks, Janice Chiang doing the lettering, Neil Yomtov colors, Dan Daly was the editor, and Jim Shooter was the editor-in-chief. And I love the way how this book starts. We see all the other Autobots in silhouette looking down at Ratchet, and it says he's dedicated his entire life on Earth and on his native planet Cybertron to saving the lives of others. For the last 238 hours straight, he's welded metal plates, reconnected circuits, fused wires, re-etched microchips, sealed fuel lines, all for one patient. Now, as the last precisely aimed beam from his laser scalpel closes the final crack in the patient's steel alloy skin, he's about to see if all the work was worth it. So we see Ratchet, the chief medical officer of the Autobots, will now learn whether Optimus Prime, commander of the Autobots, will live again. And I love how I just said how the Autobots here are in silhouette to an extent. And then our primary focus comes down into the operation table and Ratchet just looking diligently, trying to save the leader of the Autobots. And again, we see all of the Autobots here looking on, and it says they don't move, they don't speak. They watch. As minutes turn to hours, they wait to hear what Ratchet has to say. Until, fellow Autobots, friends, there's nothing more he can do. Optimus Prime is beyond repair. And this shakes Ratchet because they set up a new security system so that they can go say goodbye to their friend by doing the funeral. And here, Ratchet says, "I won't be there, Perceptor. Count me out." And he goes, "Why?" He says, "I can't face another of my failures, First Aid. You go on without me." Ratchet, like you, I too am a doctor. We do the best we can, and often it's still not enough. And then I like what First Aid here, he kind of gives them some very insightful advice. First Aid says, "I understand your grief, Ratchet, but remember, we doctors must concern ourselves with those we can still help, the living. Where there's life, there's hope. There's nothing we can do for the dead. Don't allow Optimus Prime to haunt you after we've sent him to his final resting place." So as they drive off with their leader, he walks about the Ark. And what's interesting is how this has shook Ratchet, makes him kind of see things differently. He goes, as much as he thinks he hasn't been on this lousy world as long as I have, watching one pal after another get chopped up by Decepticon fire. Sure, I've managed to save most of them and just keep them alive, barely. Here in the repair bay in these life support capsules. So what? I have neither the equipment nor the spare parts to return them to operating status, so what good am I as a doctor? And that's what you call good character development, because now we have Ratchet, who's relatively been confident, dove into an Decepticon hive with Sam Witwicky. Wasn't Sam. What's his name in this book? It's not Sam Witwicky. I'm thinking of the stupid Michael Bay movies. Buster, that's his name. And to save Optimus and all them because, yeah, that's a whole other thing that we'll get into in another time. But anyway, to see him now start to question his abilities, saying that, what good am I as a doctor? But to move the plot forward, he goes, well, better than moping, there's a place that I can go that can maybe find some spare parts. So he goes to a junkyard. And he goes, yeesh, this planet's natives are barbaric when it comes to burying their dead. But then he remembers that, on Earth, machines don't live. And he's like, well, I'm glad because I don't want to fancy myself a grave robber. But he starts looking and actually finds stuff for Ironhide, for Prowl. And it's interesting that he's like finally starting to kind of feel a little more, busying himself, kind of starting to feel a little bit better. But what happens is we're introduced to a villain called the Mechanic. And a deal goes south. They got to get away because it's actually a police stinger. And they steal Ratchet. And he's like, there's nothing I can do but play along. And, he's like, I can't reveal myself and cause the problem. But what happens is the Mechanic realizes that this is no normal ambulance. He's like, but this is no ambulance interior I've ever seen. Car parts, machinery, what kind of vehicle is this? So he starts using Ratchet's free, it's basically like a cryo spray to help burns and whatnot, and also his laser scalpel to get away from the police. And they eventually learn because Ratchet's finally had enough. He's like, I helped you two to get away, but no longer am I going to sit here and be your captive. And the Mechanic, I believe is what his name is like, hey, it's one of those robots that we've been hearing about that say that they're alive. So they follow him to the Ark. And I wish we could have gotten a little more character development on this Mechanic character, because every time they call him a thief, he gets real unhinged. Goes, don't call me a thief! And I'm wondering, if you guys have read these before, let me know if he comes back in later issues. But you find out, there's one bit of dialogue where he says that he has a mechanical engineering background. And so he starts to kind of figure out how the Ark works, because he's able to get past the defenses that, what's the big robot's name? Omega Supreme sets up. Which, yes, in this book, he's more like a regular Autobot compared to the cartoon or the latest War on Cybertron shows on Netflix, where he's more this mythic, godlike creature. And here he's just a regular, just more giant Autobot. And he uses the Ark's defenses against the rest of the Autobots. And it's just like, I don't know what happened. I thought my system was foolproof, but it's no longer responding to my radio signals. So it just ends up with Ratchet versus the Mechanic. And Ratchet actually gets thrown through the ringer. He's like, I'm getting weak. I'm leaking too much fuel. I can't drive any further. And then again here, that human was right. I suppose courage wasn't included in my programming. Why would a doctor need it? And I'm not much of a doctor either. I've lost more lives than I've saved. But he has a change of heart, and they're able to scare off the Mechanic. Sadly, he doesn't get caught. But it's interesting the way that Ratchet goes through this full character development and kind of regains his confidence. And I like that they kind of bring the whole book together and says, I haven't gotten over the death of Optimus Prime, but I've been too busy to think about the dead. I've been too concerned with helping the living. That's what I'm talking about. That's some damn good storytelling. The artwork in this is absolutely amazing. Each issue I've seen with Don Perlin and Yom Tov and Janice Chiang, it's been excellent artwork. Just one great issue after another. And these early Transformer comics are just absolutely fan-frickin-tastic. I highly recommend them, guys. So if you've enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost, support your local comic shop and see if you can get your hands on them. And if you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little Autobot bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel, and we love talking with y'all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, thank you so much for stopping by. Hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.